Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Make America Great Again justices already gave Trump de facto immunity and disgraced the court, the Supreme Court. They've disgraced the Supreme Court. Hit subscribe to this channel and we'll find out why the Washington Post has stated that the conservative justices have already disgraced the Supreme Court. Why? Because they've essentially already ruled in favor of Trump on presidential immunity. That's going to be his second major victory in a couple of months. The first major constitutional victory for Trump, I predicted on this channel, which is why we're on our way to 300,000 subscribers. And hit subscribe. I said there would be a unanimous 9-0, even the liberal justices' Supreme Court decision overturning the absurd, unconstitutional Colorado ban. He will get by tomorrow or Friday because they moved their timeline past Wednesday. So again, I don't know exactly when they're going to come out with the official statement or the official ruling and decision, but it's going to be sometime tomorrow, latest sometime Friday. Paul Bartlett, thank you in Australia. I appreciate your support so greatly. Paul Bartlett, to my viewers around the world in Australia, in New Zealand, Canada, UK, the Philippines, Nepal, everywhere around the world, Korea, Nigeria, everywhere around the world. Thank you for watching this channel. We are growing, and it's because of you. God bless you, and I appreciate your support. Ladies and gentlemen, they've already essentially given Trump immunity. That's why Democrats and media have been melting down and going after and disparaging and demeaning and trying to insult the Supreme Court. So what they've done is they've tried to disparage, demean, lessen the historic significance of these rulings in favor of Trump. Okay, what we'll do tonight, I'll go ahead and I'll start off with the great Alan Dershowitz, but then we're going to talk about how they're trying to go after Justice Alito, Justice Thomas, and others simply to delegitimize the Supreme Court because it's the only institution that isn't influenced by media, which serves as an echo chamber and just an extension of the Democratic Party. But hit subscribe. Let's get started. He will get immunity. It's just a matter of, I think, tomorrow when he does, hit subscribe to this channel or be here tomorrow when he does get immunity. Latest Friday, so if it's not tomorrow, it'll be Friday. Then we'll get the third major Supreme Court decision, the third monumental historic decision that the Supreme Court is going to give backing Trump and giving him a constitutional victory. The first one was the Colorado ban being overturned. The second one will be tomorrow, latest Friday, with at least partial presidential immunity. And the third victory will be the unconstitutional, completely absurd guilty verdict in New York being overturned. You cannot have a state does not have the jurisdiction or the authority to level a federal crime at anyone, Trump included. So President Trump was not guilty. He was innocent of everything. The FEC and the DOJ dropped the hush money case. Former FEC chairman Hans A. von Spakovsky, Bradley Smith, and Trey Traynor have all stated that he did not commit a campaign finance violation. Neither did, by the way, Michael Cohen, which he pled guilty to, which is hilarious, just because he committed crimes himself. But the FEC dropped the hush money case because there was no case. The state of New York did not explain what Trump did to break any federal laws, and there were no federal statutes that he broke according to the verdict. They just said a broad, ambiguous, well, he broke campaign finance laws, and that's it. But they don't have the jurisdiction or the authority, no state does, to decide unilaterally if Trump or anyone else broke a federal statute. Anyway, let's listen to the great Alan Dershowitz. Then we'll get to the very sad, weak, ineffective attempt at trying to go after conservative justices on the Supreme Court when judges presiding over Trump are highly conflicted. Let's continue.
Let's bring in now Alan Dershowitz, professor emeritus at Harvard Law School, the author of Get Trump. Maybe there'll be a second book where it's they can't get Trump because of this. Professor Dershowitz, I've been dying to talk to you about this. When this decision broke, everyone's, on the left, their heads exploded. On the right, a lot of people say, yes, this must be to the nation's highest court. Where do you stand on the fact, first, that they accepted this, and how they may rule? I'm not sure de facto is fair, as I heard one pundit say.
This is a serious case, and I don't think they will simply affirm the lower court, which went too far. And I don't think they will accept completely Trump's arguments, which went too far. I suspect they will come down with a divided decision, maybe 6-3, who knows, but a decision that splits the differences and gives Trump some immunity, even after he left office, for acts that were of his presidency, but will deny him immunity for actions which are primarily political. The Supreme Court did the right thing by taking the case. It's an important case, and even though it will stop these trials from occurring before the election, that these trials should not occur before the election. That really does constitute, in effect, election interference.
You've said that, yes.
The system is playing too great a role in our election. We do not want our president to be determined by prosecutors or by judges. We want them to be determined by the people.
I want you to talk about the process. This was Donald Trump's right to bring it to the Supreme Court. This was any citizen's right. This is the process that's in place from our founding fathers. But some on the left have been very critical, acting as if Nancy Pelosi tweeting, "No one's above the law." I mean, this is just where, in fact, the case goes and should go. Can you talk a little bit about some of the criticism there and explain to our viewers why that is so dangerous, I think, because this is what our nation is founded. These are the systems, these are the constructs, like our Constitution.
Look, the hard left radicals, including some of my former colleagues at Harvard, Professor Lawrence Tribe and others, think the Supreme Court belongs to them. And if the Supreme Court doesn't rule the way they want it to rule, they think it shouldn't rule at all. And these were people, including me, I'm a liberal, who was an activist in the court back in the day when the Supreme Court was ruling very much in favor of the liberal rights, whether it be abortion or the right to vote or many other rights. Now that the Supreme Court is more conservative, these same scholars are saying, well, the Supreme Court should stay out of deciding these cases. It's pure hypocrisy, and you shouldn't listen to academics, and especially Harvard professors, who clearly have an agenda here and who aren't interested in a neutral approach to Supreme Court adjudication. They just want it their way.
Can't have it both ways. Professor Alan Dershowitz, as always, a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much.
So tomorrow or Friday, because they might just wait until after the debate. By the way, we'll have a post-debate recap tomorrow. It should be very amusing and interesting. Extremely amusing and interesting, ladies and gentlemen. I think Trump is going to absolutely demolish our current occupant in the Oval Office, mashed potato brains. But look, you're going to have a huge, historic, monumental victory. The Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, late-night comedians, all of Hollywood, the New Yorker. Well, New Yorker actually published a pretty good article, but the Atlantic, Mother Jones, The Nation, Daily Beast, BuzzFeed Vice used to be in political journalism. They're not anymore. Pretty much every major publication across the country that talks about politics, you'll have people moaning and upset and angry that Trump got yet another historic, monumental constitutional victory that I've been saying was going to happen. He doesn't need full immunity, ladies and gentlemen. He just needs partial immunity. And they remand the indictment and the case back to lower courts, and then lower courts have to decide what is official and unofficial act. What acts are official and what acts are unofficial. They tried to indict Trump stating, and they're trying to imprison Trump for stating that he deceived the public, which is hilarious because Biden does that all the time whenever you can understand what he's saying. Whenever you can interpret or make out or decipher what the man is saying, he's always deceiving and lying. There wasn't 9% inflation when he took office. We can go on forever. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, the Washington Post used to have a running tally of Trump's lies, but they stopped that with Biden. Gee, I wonder why. Because you have these publications that essentially work for the Democratic Party. These are publications like Johnny Carson, the Washington Post, Hollywood celebrities in like 1979 or 1989 or 1985. They in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they didn't overtly root for one political side. When people say, oh, things have become so politicized, well, that's because American media has taken the stance that the Democratic Party must defeat the Republican Party. That's why you have Republicans losing the popular vote or Trump losing the popular vote. If you had media that wasn't overtly on the side of the Democratic Party, you'd have Trump winning the popular vote. He has 90 to 95% negative media coverage, and he still gets close, or relatively close. So, and that's with all the public relations going towards Democrats. And they ignore the conflicts of interest with judges that decide unconstitutional rulings against Trump, and they focus on alleged conflicts of interest, as we'll talk about right here. But let's just, tomorrow or the next day, please go ahead, think of this channel, because I've been telling you, when Trump gets that victory, and he will, there's going to be a huge meltdown on social media. I'm not on social. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I just have H.A. Goodman. This channel, we're almost at 300,000 subscribers. And I have two other channels, the Stock Market Crash channel, the Bitcoin Crash channel. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have a major financial crash very soon, unfortunately. But let's look really quickly at how they're trying to deceive the public and disparage the court.
The conversation, and this became the secret tapes.
New developments about Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's compromise ethics and open support and comfort with extreme far-right causes.
I don't know that we can negotiate with the left in the way that needs to happen for the polarization to end.
There are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised.
So a liberal activist, director, film producer, secretly recorded Alito. I actually don't mind that. I mean, Veritas and James O'Keefe would do that, but they would find criminal behavior. There's nothing that Alito said that was wrong in any way. He was talking about the nature of American politics in this day and age. One side wins, one side loses. Democrats don't even know what the word compromise means. So they try to say, oh my God, he thinks that there can't be a compromise. Well, if it's unconstitutional to try to imprison Trump, it's unconstitutional. If it's unconstitutional to try to ban him in every state, it's unconstitutional. You have to take the L at some point, Democrats. But see, they don't know what a loss means. When they fall upwards, they're like a football coach that continues losing and gets an NFL job. But let's continue.
So it's not like we're going to split the difference.
People in this country who believe in God have got to keep fighting for that, to return our country to a place of godliness.
Oh, I agree with you.
But Lauren Windsor is a fraud, a progressive activist posing as a Christian conservative to try to get Alito to say something incriminating.
To people who want to pearl clutch about this, please tell me how we're going to get answers when the Supreme Court has been shrouded in secrecy. Are we going to continue our tradition of secular democracy, or are we going to be led to Christian theocracy by this Supreme Court?
Clay, with so many...
So the Supreme Court just ruled in favor of Democrats on the Second Amendment and reproductive rights, so they got two victories just recently. Okay, the Supreme Court just gave Democrats two major victories. They're going to get losses also. But see, Democrats are used to absolute, in their minds, if they don't get absolute victory, it's the end of the world. That's why they accused Trump with a Steele dossier that was completely full of lies and deceit and information that misinforms. Oh, and then they got the social media victory, you could call it, where Biden's administration, or any administration, by the way, I'd love to see how they react when the future Trump administration calls out information that misinforms, and they'll push back then. But they got a third victory. I mean, this isn't like the biggest, most, the greatest constitutional decision victory will be the immunity decision that goes Trump's way. He'll get partial immunity. That's a lot more important, I think, than the political gains of the last three. But they've gotten three, including the Biden social media. They're allowed now to just. It's constitutional for Biden's administration, or any administration, to pressure social media companies. Okay, they've gotten three victories recently. What are they upset about? Okay, it's just not enough. They just they just want everything their way, and then they claim that to have a country move towards godliness is not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing. It's better than blindly listening to intelligence agencies, bureaucrats, and a fabricated consensus that's almost always wrong, that sends Americans to never-ending military conflict and counterinsurgency conflicts because of faulty intelligence, like in Vietnam, like with WMD, like with a Steele dossier that was a complete compilation of lies, in addition to the 50 intel officials that said Hunter's laptop was a disinformation campaign, which is, of course, nonsense. They lied through their teeth. But let's continue.
Shows treating this as a scandal. What did Sam Alito say that was so terrible?
Nothing. I hate the idea of going into any event and secretly taping anyone saying anything. You guys have probably been on the cocktail party circuit where people you don't know might come up and they say, hey, I watched you on this, or I listened to that segment. You kind of have a nice conversation to be friendly, but you're not exactly, bearing your soul with the person. It sounded like a cocktail party conversation to me. But also, there was no hypocrisy here. It's not like he said, oh, yeah, I'm on the Supreme Court, and my belief is that the Ten Commandments is the only law that exists anywhere in the world. I mean, if anything, I thought that the decision that came down right afterwards, 9-0, on the morning after pill that didn't grant standing was pretty straightforward answer that we don't live in a Christian theocracy, and that everything is still subject to the rule of law. I think the Supreme Court justices in general have done a good job. I wish we'd do a better job of protecting them. I wish we'd talk more about the fact that somebody tried to show up at Kavanaugh's house and kill him, the fact that there are still protesters showing up in contravention of federal law and state law outside of their homes, chanting at all hours.
So Clay Travis is 100% right. Chuck Schumer put Kavanaugh's life at risk. Okay, Chuck Schumer put the lives of Supreme Court justices, according to Samuel Alito and Kavanaugh and others, at risk. And so Democrats get away with a lot more. Tim Pool is also brilliant in explaining how Democrats get away with, or liberals or progressives or people on the left get away with so much more. Okay, you look at the alleged conflicts of interest because of a real estate deal. You have Hunter on the board of directors of an energy company where a laptop is linked to bribery, graft, and emails asking for influence. The New York Post actually published an email that asks for how can you use your influence on the company's behalf, I think is almost verbatim. And then you have a judge ruling over Trump that gave directly to Biden's campaign and then is linked to millions upon millions of dollars for a Biden super PAC. So, I mean, it's like, that's infinitely more of a conflict of interest than this recording or a business or a land deal or a real estate deal. But again, it's like Democrats really don't care about conflicts of interest. They care about what they can utilize against anybody, Republican, Trump, Supreme Court justices, anybody that gets in the way of their ability to dominate politics. By the way, Trump's going to win, likely in a landslide on November 5th.
in public residential areas.
Let me get
to
Lucy
me,
in.
this is just part and parcel of not respecting Supreme Court justices.
Lucy, a Supreme Court justice can't say, I believe in godliness, especially when he doesn't use the word but agrees with what someone else says?
Yeah.
You have to understand also, Democrats fancy themselves, or people on the left, as these wonderful humanists, these wonderful, fantastic atheists, and that's fine. I mean, I love Christopher Hitchens, a big inspiration to me. If you're an atheist, great. But if your religion, if you claim to be an atheist and your religion is intel agencies and groupthink and a consensus of bureaucrats and wonderful experts that always just bolster your existing biases, or if you side with experts or intel agencies because your side, your political party is in the executive branch, whereas you don't side with them when Trump is in office, that's a religion. If you're an atheist and your religion is politics, you've replaced a traditional religion with some kind of very warped cult. So it's like, I would much rather have a country that leans towards godliness, which the definition of that word could mean, a move towards goodness and, goodness, not just political expediency. But anyway, let's continue.
Sure. And I mean, of course, we know that these people have privately held beliefs, but we're missing two items here in the story. One is the contrast between what Alito said and what Roberts said. Lauren Windsor also engaged Roberts a lot. Roberts gave very good answers.
Yes,
Roberts
he said exactly what you wanted to say. That
Alito,
we should just decide cases. That other things are for elected officials.
He said something like it's a modest job. He said, this is not as tumultuous a time as you think. So I do think that contrast between Alito and Roberts is interesting. And the other thing that's really important here, just so everyone knows, a little bit of context, Lauren Windsor's playbook came from copying James O'Keefe's Project Veritas playbook, right? And
which, by the way, when O'Keefe, when he does that and records, he actually finds major either criminal behavior or major bias in media, where they're pushing falsehoods, where they're pushing information that misinforms for political gain. This was just a meaningless, benign conversation where the word godliness was brought up, and then suddenly it's like the end of the world.
And no one, I don't hear, Clay, I think you've had James on your show, right? Like, James O'Keefe does the same thing. This was a public event.
Arrest the girl and guy who's a producer at CNN to go out on a date with him, and then the guy's trying to impress the girl and trying to pretend that like he directs all CNN programming, and then you blow it up. We've talked about that actually on my radio show, Clay and Buck, a lot. I don't like secret tapes. I say exactly what I think. I think if people tape me secretly, I'm not encouraging it, by the way, but I think if you tape me secretly in any conversation, I would sound the exact same I do on this show and on my radio shows. And I think that's why it's important to be living a consistent life in that respect in terms of your opinions. But I just, the New York Times, CNN, all these sources that ran to fall over themselves would never do this kind of reporting themselves. So it feels like a hide the ball trick to allow her to do it and then react to it when the ethics of your own organization wouldn't allow you to do it.
And by the way, there is no investigative reporting. There are no investigative reporters that report on conflicts of interest, scandals, controversies pertaining to Hunter or Joe or Hillary or Bill or President Obama or any Democrat. You will not find one investigative journalist at the Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, although New York Magazine just recently published something really interesting. But any major publication or major newspaper, most major newspapers don't have investigative reporters investigating possible criminal activity committed by Democrats. They just don't. That's why you look at the Pulitzer Prize The Pulitzer Prizes nowadays are just investigating Trump. Never, you know who deserves the Pulitzer Prize? The New York Post, the Daily Mail, because they've done a lot of investigative journalism. And there are endless articles on not just gifts, but borderline bribery or overt bribery and graft linked to the Bidens and other Democrats. But it's like they're going to lose. They're going to lose because the Supreme Court is the judicial branch of this country, and they're going to side with Trump. You can't simply say that a president committed a crime. And most people don't understand. 18 U.S. Code 371 is the statute they're trying to level at Trump. It is a broad, vague, ambiguous statute, just like the misdemeanors that were elevated to felonies. With Clinton or Biden, you have Sirius or Nixon, you have very easy to understand criminal statutes. You can't own private servers as a Secretary of State. It is against the law. It is against the law to transfer or email top secret data onto a private server. That is clearly against the law. It is clearly against the law to put classified data in your garage like Biden did without the power to declassify. Clinton and Biden did not have the power to declassify. Then we're finding out the Bureau actually put classified data in folders that read top secret. They actually possibly mishandled the evidence and doctored or added on to evidence purely for a public relations stunt. So there goes that effort to imprison Trump. He was a president with the power to declassify. Clinton and Biden were not. And I still think Hillary Clinton is going to replace Biden. I just do not see them going with Biden. I just think that I think Hillary Clinton will replace Biden eventually. But let's continue.
Thoughts on this? We are awaiting a Supreme Court decision on former President Trump's claim of immunity in his federal classified documents case. And former AG Eric Holder is worried. Watch.
Wait a minute. A president can violate the American criminal law if he or she is doing something in their official capacity. That is an absurd and dangerous conclusion. And I'm worried, given the length of time that it has taken for the Supreme Court to decide this case, that something along those lines might come out of the Supreme Court.
Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress for refusing to give documents related to a failed arms deal during President Obama's administration. Like Merrick Garland, who is now in the news, and they might try. The Republicans are saying that they might try to detain the AG. Who knows? Probably not. But Anna Paulina Luna is pretty awesome. Like Merrick Garland, Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress. I think the only two attorney generals held in contempt. I could be wrong.
From one AG to another, do you agree with Eric Holder, Matt?
Well, that sounds like a lot of liberal hand-wringing. Remember, they have placed a lot of their faith in beating Donald Trump in their lawfare strategy, whether it's the cases from Jack Smith, whether it's Fani Willis in Fulton County, or whether it was the case up in New York City. You've seen, since President Trump hasn't been in court, how he's been traveling and communicating, whether it's, when he's going to Pittsburgh soon, he was in Wisconsin recently, the huge crowds. You see why they want to keep him in a courtroom, why they want to keep him off the campaign trail. But, the Supreme Court is going to say what the law is. Obviously, there is presidential immunity for official acts. Our system would not function without that, and the Supreme Court is going to say where the parameters of that. In fact, Eric Holder knows his history. He knows the Nixon case already established some of that precedent, at least in civil cases, and a lot of us expect that they'll extend that to criminal cases.
So how should ultimately, you said what you think they will do, how should this court rule? Put yourself on it for a moment, Matt. How should they rule?
Well, remember, I'm not an elite Harvard grad or Yale grad, so I'm a state school, Iowa law school, so I'm not sure I'm qualified, at least under the modern definition, but I'll take a stab at it, Todd. I think what they should do is they should say that presidents do have immunity, that our founding fathers intended them to not make decisions with fear that they would be prosecuted by the next administration. So I think they should say that the outer bounds of presidential immunity are all the official acts that can be contemplated in a president's job under the Constitution, and you heard that in the oral argument, Scott. If you remember when there was a lot of back and forth, but it was pretty clear that many of the justices were coming out that there was presidential immunity for official acts, and they were just trying to find kind of where that extreme edge is. But it is also, to me, not these crazy hypotheticals about, sort of ordering, your political opponents assassinated. It is the practical of doing the job of president and making decisions to protect the American people. One thing that Joe Biden, based on the last story we just talked about, doesn't seem to want to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, today is a decision day at the Supreme Court. So is tomorrow. So we're going to be watching if they come to a conclusion. Matt, thank you so much for.
Ladies and gentlemen, be here tomorrow and Friday and November 5th, because November 5th, every single day is a countdown to November 5th. Paul and everyone here, to my viewers around the world, thank you so much. And in the U.S., I love you. This is just a countdown, ladies and gentlemen, every single day to November 5th. And I thank God, and I'm so thankful that I have all my viewers to listen to my analysis and my viewpoints. And, for people who've been here since 2016, we're finally, we're going to reach 300,000 soon, and it's because of you. And I'm just blessed and honored to be able to give my 2 cents, my opinion, my viewpoint, my analysis on American politics and other issues. And I'm just so blessed and honored to have each and every one of you here. Be here tomorrow, people. I will be right yet again. A 100% certainty that they will give Trump at least partial. All he needs is partial immunity, everybody. That's all he needs. Look out for the word partial. They might say, Trump can be convicted. And then the fine print might be, but still, it's a victory for Trump. And then we'll move on to Trump, the guilty verdict being upended. I will have also a live stream for sure talking about the debate tomorrow, which should be an absolute hilarious catastrophe for Democrats politically, and a victory for Trump. Although no matter what happens, mashed potato brains could do anything on stage. It'll be, oh man, it's amazing. Oh yeah, Trump bad. But we'll talk about that also. Hit subscribe, everybody. Thank you so very, very, very much. Paul Bartlett, thank you so much. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so very, very much, Paul, in Australia. I can't thank you enough.